Hi friend. You wanna know how I know social media isn't real? Is because this is what you see right now. What you cannot see is the fact that my son has taken out every single dog toy that we own in this house, along with every single couch cushion, not couch cushion, but cushion, pillow, couch pillow, thrown them all over the floor, and I don't have it in me. I don't have it in me to clean it up. What's also not real is the fact that it was a very hard day. It was a very, very hard day with the toddler. And honestly, I've been looking forward to filming this video all day. I've got my glass of wine. Cheers. And if you hear yelling in the background, my husband is currently doing bedtime with a tot. I've got a furry friend right here. And I wanted to just kind of hang out here casually with you today. I feel like I show up more authentically as myself when I do that. And I kind of wanted to just chat like we were friends, because it kind of occurred to me that I show up here and a lot of times in my videos, I'll tell you who I am, what I do, and why I'm here. And I'm Joey. Hi, if this is your first time here, I'm Joey. I'm a full-time work from home, stay-at-home mom. I'm an author, and I'm the person who's here to encourage you to become the main character in your own life. However, I've never actually really delved into becoming the main character in your own life, why I'm so passionate about that, and like how to actually do that. So I figured we could discuss that in today's video. And in doing so, I thought the best way for me to do that would be to share a story time and then also follow it up with a few action items that you can implement literally today to flip the switch and become the main character in your own life and actually be the main character. And so let's just get this out right at the front. If you're wondering about like what it means to be the main character or to have like a main character moment, this is where my dust off my my seemingly useless writing degree. It's one of those moments this morning where I was like, wait a minute, hold on. Is there a moment that this writing degree is actually going to become impactful in my regular and personal life? Because it was the first time it kind of like all crashed together and the dots were connecting, and I was like, oh my gosh, okay, this makes sense. So if you don't know, I went to school for writing. That's what my degree is in. I'm obviously an author. I create stories, I create characters. And you've watched movies, you've seen TV shows, you've watched the main character moment unfold countless times. I think one that is extremely poignant, or one that is very, like most people are really familiar with, is the moment in Legally Blonde where Elle decides to like do the thing and stop being the blonde bimbo, and there's the really inspiring and motivating music playing, and you have this montage of the girl really doing it, right? Like she's got her moment, she's putting in the effort and the work, and then all of a sudden you start to see it pay off. That's main character energy, okay? And I've had a few main character moments in my life, and you guys, if you've been around since the beginning of my channel, then you probably are aware of the main character moment I had last year where everything was horrible. I made a decision, I took some action, everything changed and my entire life changed. I'm not going to talk about that one today, but what I am going to talk about is a main character moment that I've actually never talked about in a public way before, not on my blog, not here on this channel, not on TikTok, not anywhere. And it started in 2019. And if I'm being honest, what happened last year was exciting and fun and crazy and dream come true-y. But what I went through in 2019 and 2020, I would say, is a more radical life change and a bigger pivoting moment for me. And so it actually started with my husband experiencing a change in his job that was going to have him temporarily relocated to like the Raleigh-ish area for training. And then from there, we would kind of find out like where we were going to be a little bit more permanently. At the time we were living in Charlotte. My husband was just gonna go and stay with my mom while he went through the training, and then we would figure out where we were going from there. We were renting our house in Charlotte, and if you know anything about the Charlotte real estate market, it is expensive. It's astronomical now, but it was still pretty bad back in 2019. And so I just kind of had this moment where full clarity kind of settled upon me, and I was like, I don't think we're supposed to be in Charlotte anymore. Let's let's leave. Let's go and move in with my mom. Like, let's go stay there while you go through training, and we'll figure out where we're going to go from there. We won't have to worry about being tied into a lease or any of that stuff, because our lease was at that time like coming to an end. So the timing was working out really well. And my husband was like, yep, love the idea. My mom was excited about it. We lost my dad in 2016, so she was living on her own. I'm the baby of 5, so having gone her whole life with having a very full, very loud house to being literally in a home by herself, she was excited at the idea of having us come and stay. And it was supposed to be extremely, extremely temporary. I think, it's hard for me to recall now, but I'm pretty sure when we moved in, it was supposed to be like 8 weeks. So we were in our mid-30s and packed up our house and we moved in with my mother. And initially, like I said, it was supposed to be very temporary. And so it took a minute for the depression to settle in. I was working for myself at the time doing freelancing, so my job just came with me. And I worked from home, and obviously my husband was out of the house all day working. And initially it was fun, like initially it was exciting, and then something changed where an opportunity came forward for my husband that came out of the blue. And if you don't know anything about our lives, my husband is a football coach. He's been a football coach pretty much our entire marriage. And we lost football in 2014. It made a swift exit out of our lives, as football can sometimes do, and it had not re-entered our lives. And my husband was working a normal job. And if you know anything about having like a deep-rooted passion within you, you can work a job and you can make a living. It does not feel the same as pursuing your passion. You just show up as a different person. And so when football was suddenly now back on the table, we both were like, we have to do it. The circumstances could not have aligned more perfectly. If we were in any other situation, we would not have been able to say yes to this situation. And so we were like, the stars have aligned. This is perfect. We're going to make this move, take the job. We'll go from there. However, my husband taking this job kind of set everything else in our lives on pause. And I mean that because obviously we had moved to my mom's for this temporary training, and then that job was going to relocate us somewhere. And now we were going to be staying more permanently in the area that we had moved into, which was very expensive to live in. And I don't know if you, like, football is attached to an educational salary. And so we were put in a situation where we were, for lack of a better term, I will say, stuck. I felt stuck. Everything that we had planned, out the window, and for the best reason, but it was out the window, and the depression settled in. It did not take long before I looked at the walls that I was sitting within, and I was like, oh my God, we're gonna be here forever. We're gonna live in my mother's house forever. We were never gonna get out of here. Why are we here? And though we were really only there because we were gonna be somewhere temporarily, and at this point we had made the decision that we weren't going to rent again. Like, if we were going to move out of my mom's house, it was to buy a house. And that takes some strategy to make happen. Getting a brand new job kind of puts things on hold with that. It's a whole thing. And so, yes, we could have moved out, gone and gotten a rental and done that. But we wanted to stick to the plan that we had. We wanted to buy a house. And so I'm just watching everything kind of come crumbling down. And I have a tendency to spiral very quickly. And so the spiral spiraled. The spiral spiraled fast, and I was very much stuck in this victim mindset of like, we're never gonna get out of here. And then you start to tell yourself a story because you're in your mid-30s and you're living with your mother, and you're like, oh my gosh, I am a big fat loser. And you start to say these things to yourself enough. I'm stuck, I'm a loser, what do people think of me? Like, you tell this story, you ruminate on it, you ingrain it into your soul, you believe it, and then it's even harder for you to pull yourself out of, because you're just essentially putting on repeat all of the worst things about yourself, and finding the positivity and the ability to like be grateful for the situation you're in just feels harder. And I'm a firm believer that like gratitude, positive thinking, taking positive action makes a big difference, and that comes into play here in a minute, but it's very important that you know how very deep in the sinkhole of what is my life that I was in for you to understand how powerful this moment can be. And so this was in like August that July, that all of this had started to happen. And I, again, sinking further, I knew we were going to be in my mom's house through Christmas. Like, there was no question about it. And I was just sinking further and further and further down. And 2 months later, my mother was diagnosed with cancer, and suddenly everything made sense. Everything made sense. The change in my husband's job that moved us to her house, the change in my husband's job that forced us to stay, because we would have been long gone at that point. And here is my mother, who is on her own because we've lost my dad, facing cancer by herself. And what are the chances that my husband and I are living in her house? There for her, I worked for myself. So I had this freedom in my schedule to be with her through every step of the way. We were extremely lucky in the sense that it was seriously treatable, and it wasn't long before she was cancer-free, and life was turning in the right direction. And once my mother was treated and in remission, I started to spiral again, because now my purpose was seemingly over. And I was like, okay, I knew this is why we were here. This was important. I had a purpose, and now I am purposeless. Get me out of here. And something that was a very big expense for us that I was trying to figure out a way to kind of offload was health insurance. If you've ever been self-employed, you know that health insurance is very, very expensive. And I was like strategizing different ways that I could become insured. My husband's insurance was way too much money for me to be on, and independently I was on health insurance, and it was crippling us. It was so expensive. And my husband called me one random day and was like, hey, there's actually a part-time position at the school, and it comes with benefits. It comes with health insurance. Do you want it? The job would essentially be yours if you want it. And I had this moment where I was like, oh my God, if I take this job, I'm giving up on everything. If I take this job, I'm basically telling myself that I couldn't hack it as an entrepreneur, which wasn't true. I had a very successful business, but it's, again, the stories that you're telling yourself. And literally the only reason I would have taken the job was for the health insurance. And it was only going to take like 4 hours out of my day in trade for health insurance. But on top of that, it would have also paid me money. And so despite the fact that I seriously didn't want to do it, I was sad. I was experiencing all of these like internal battling thoughts. And regardless, I was like, you know what? Seems like it's the right thing to do. He set up an interview with the VP of that department, and I, within the week, was supposed to go in and meet with them about this position. And I did. I went in, I met with them, and unbeknownst to me, there was this whole other position, a huge job that they thought that I'd be really good at, and it was full-time, and it was like a director level position. Mind you, I'd been an entrepreneur for a very long time at that point. Had never really worked in an official office before. And all of that seemed super intimidating to me, and I couldn't believe that people were seeing that in me, and they were like, oh my gosh, you'd be really great at this really high level position. And I was like, I just need health insurance. Obviously, I'm not telling them this, but that's what I'm thinking in my head. And we go through the entire meeting. They're putting me up for this other position, but in the meantime, they needed me in this part-time role. Paperwork's getting passed around. I'm getting walked over to HR. I'm agreeing to this. Again, now only because I need the health insurance, and as I'm signing the last piece of paper, I find out that this position does not, in fact, come with health insurance. But I've now agreed to this job, and it's where my husband works, and so I don't feel like I can, sorry, not gonna do it. Also, you have to understand, in being there and meeting these people, something felt like I was at home. I don't know how to explain it except for that like it felt like I was at home, right? So it's like, whatever. If nothing else, I have this now like steady part-time job. I'll just use this part-time money to pay for my health insurance. We'll get there. Now, mind you, put a pin in it. There was this other position that they were still considering me for, this huge director level position. Now, that position would have put me in a situation where I would have had to like kind of close up shop on my clients, on my business. And I wasn't sure yet how I felt about that. I was not there, right? Like I really just needed the health insurance. It's really all I needed. And regardless, there was something in that moment when I'm signing this paperwork that I'm like, there's a reason for this. I don't know what it is, but it feels right. And so here I am now starting this part-time job, which was a very front and center position where I was in the part of the institution where I was seeing and talking to pretty much everybody and anybody within the institution. And I'm up now for this big director level position, which I'm not really sure that I want, but I'm also going to put my best foot forward because that's just who I am. But I'm also now in a situation where I am getting to interact with people in a way that I haven't interacted with people in a very long time. Because if you work for yourself or you work from home, you know how very isolating that can be. And I don't think it gets talked about enough that like you can kind of lose yourself in that isolation, because a lot of our personalities, a lot of who we are as people come out when we're in exchange with other people. And there's something to be said for the energetic exchange that happens face to face. And so when you are missing out on that, like I felt like a part of my soul was laying dormant. And all of a sudden I was like, okay, I'm in this situation. We're here. I've already agreed to it. And if there's one thing about me, I'm going to go all in on what I've agreed to do, whether I want to do it or not. And so I made this momentary decision the night before my first day on the job. And I swear to you, like I get chills when I think about it. That moment where I had this like very clear thought in my mind where I was like, okay, I don't know what this is going to look like. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know the purpose for this, but I'm in it now. You're going to make the most of this. You can either go there and be miserable that you've now agreed to this whole job that you didn't want in the first place and you aren't even getting what you needed out of the situation, or you can trust that this is all for a reason and it's gifting you something you can't yet see, but it's offering you the opportunity to explore a path you haven't yet traveled down. And I made that very clear decision that night that I was going to show up as my most authentic self and that I was going to exude the kind of energy that I used to exude when I was a child. And when I was a kid, I was the happiest person on the planet. In my elementary school, the director of the elementary school, every morning when I would walk in would go, oh, here comes happy, happy, joy, joy, because I was always just so smiley and cheerful and happy. And that light had sort of dimmed out over the years. And I was like, you know what? No, like blank slate. I'm just gonna show up as the person that I feel like I am within my soul and that I'm gonna believe has purpose, right? You guys, we were still living at my mother's house. I have this job now that doesn't give me insurance and I still have my business. So now I'm busier than I've ever been. And I still don't know how we're gonna get the heck out of my mom's house. There are so many question marks still. 3 weeks into this job, the world shuts down because of COVID. And now the reality of my life looks even more stuck because how are we ever gonna buy a house in the midst of COVID? We're never gonna get out of my mom's house. Also, mind you, now we're all quarantined in my mother's house. But again, you look at the flip side of that and it's this moment where I'm like, oh my God, thank God we're here, because here is my elderly mother who lives by herself, who is just recently in remission from cancer, who would be by herself entirely, not seeing another human soul because of this whole quarantine situation. And now at least we are here with her. Right? We can take care of her, we can get groceries, we can be company for her, she can be company for us. You have to look at the flip side of that. But because this institution, it's a private institution and it is extremely archaic, they had never done a single thing digitally in their life. And you guys, that's what I do. I had spent years of my career helping small businesses get set up to run fully virtually from wherever they wanted to do their job, with every system and process and software known to man to make it possible for you to do your job from anywhere. This was my Super Bowl. And I was in now this position where I was the point person for pretty much every department in a job that I had just started to help everybody go virtual. And it gave me this rare opportunity to really step up and step in as what I can do the best. And we go, virtual for quarantine. We're quarantined for 8 weeks, something like that. We go back into the office and no joke, we went back into the office in May. We bought our house in August because the way that I showed up in that whole things going sideways moment caught some attention. And they decided that this other role that I was initially up for, this big role, was being put on the back burner because that whole department was going through a restructuring after having been quarantined. And they decided to literally create a position within the department I was already in specifically for me and my skill set and what I had to offer. Now, also, mind you, remember, I only took this job initially for health insurance. What I didn't expect to have happen was to fall in love not just with the institution and the students within the institution, but with the people that I was working with and working for. And when I tell you that it was this moment of like found family, it was answers to prayers that I didn't even know I had been praying. These were my people. They were my people. And this job was now full-time. I shuttered my business and came with health insurance. Yay! But it also offered me an opportunity it gave us this chance now to be very stable and secure in where we were. It was clear that we were going to stay put where we were, right? Like we weren't going to be moving around every 18 months. We applied for our mortgage, found our house, put in our offer, it got accepted, and we bought our house. And here we were moving out of my mom's house just a few weeks after. And I remember sitting on the floor of what is now like our front dining area and having this moment where I was like, oh my God, our entire lives look completely different than they did the day that my husband came home and told me that like, hey, he's gonna have to relocate temporarily for this training. And all of those giant question marks that were like floating up out of my head had now all been answered. Except there was one other part of our lives that just felt like a really big question mark. I wasn't sure if we would ever get to have a family. I was not sure if we'd ever get to have a family. And I started my job in July, my new job, my new position in July. I went full time in July. We bought our house in August. By the end of January, I was pregnant. And by mid-October 2021, our son entered the picture. And so you want to talk about from like February 2019 to October 2021, our lives looked completely different. And if you ask me how or why, I swear to you, it's just from that one tiny moment of clarity where I decided the night before I started that part-time position to just go all in. Just be super committed to this new path and be open to what comes next and put in the work and show up as authentically as I possibly can. Now, I told you that very long-winded story because I do tell very long stories. I'm so sorry about that. Because I think it's important to understand that these main character moments, this shift in your energy, it doesn't always have to look monumental. But the structure is usually pretty similar, where things are going in a certain way, you've been traveling down a certain path, and all of a sudden, things aren't good. Whether it's that they've always not been good, or things get worse and worse. But either way, you get to this point where you're like, I can't do this anymore. And then you decide, after you've grieved that feeling for a hot minute, to stop being the victim of your circumstances, take action, and go a different direction. Right? That's what happens in every movie where there's this point of conflict, a decision, action, and then we go upwards, right? So if you are looking to become the main character in your own life, there are a few things that need to take place to make that happen. And here's what they are. The first thing that has to happen for you to have your main character moment is you have to get to a place of being fed up. Whatever is happening in your life, right? Whether it's good, bad, ugly, whatever the circumstances are, you can't stomach it anymore. You are like, I cannot do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not happy here for whatever reason. It doesn't have to be some god-awful toxic situation. We outgrow situations, we outgrow people, we outgrow seasons of our lives, and you just get to this moment where you're like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I am fed up. That has to happen first. Maybe the fed up isn't necessarily showing up as fed up. It can also show up as I have nothing left to lose. I am at rock bottom. I am scared out of my mind. And when you get to a point of being so scared that your only option is to take action, that can also be that pivotal moment, right? So these are the things that I learned with my very expensive writing degree in story development, character building, all that kind of stuff. And so obviously the situation I had gotten to with the story I just told you was I was fed up with paying for the health insurance that I had to have on my own. And that was this pivotal moment of change where I explored this other path, right? Last year, that pivotal moment was not a moment of being fed up. It was a moment of absolute despair and fear of like, oh my God, what are we going to do? I don't have a choice but to take action. Fear no longer has a place here. I have to do this thing that I've been so afraid to do my whole life because I don't have a choice right now. Like I can't allow fear to enter the chat. Like we just have to do something. So you first have to get to that place, right? This pivotal moment of whether you're fed up or terrified, whatever it is, there's this nuclear moment, right? And from that nuclear moment, you then have to have a moment of clarity and decision where you go from, it's almost like you transform internally, where you go from the person who used to accept this and now you don't. You've made this decision to take action. Once you've made that decision, there is a tiny period of time. It may be a blip of a moment. It might be a couple of days. It might be a couple of weeks. It looks different for every person. But now you're in this moment of having to establish clarity. Because once you have that nuclear moment, right? This moment of like, I can't do this anymore. And you decide to make a change. The next thing you have to have in order to travel down a new path is you have to know what the new path is. You may not have full clarity of like where the destination is going to be, but you have to have clarity on what it is that you want. Like if you don't want to be on this path anymore, you need at least to make a decision with clear thoughts of like, oh, well, I'm going to go down this path. And it might take going down a few paths, a few steps before you realize, like, whoop, okay, that's not actually the direction I wanted to go in. Back up. Try a different path. You can be a Roomba in this situation. You don't have to like go confidently in one particular direction. It might look like going down one road, realizing, whoa, shit, this isn't what I wanted, back up, try again. But that's part of this process, right? It's part of exploring what this new path is going to look like. This is what makes a story interesting. This is the part where it's like the character is really coming into themselves and finding who they are and what they want and shedding the layers of insecurity and doubt, and they're putting on all of these different layers of confidence and clarity and just authenticity. And this is that part of the story where you're like, your heart starts to swell up a little bit when you're watching the TV show or you're watching the movie or reading the story. Like you're rooting for this character, right? And once you have figured out like what path it is that you're trying to go down, right? Like maybe you go down a few false paths, but then you realize like this one path you're starting to walk down, you're like, okay, this feels good. This feels right. I'm going to start down this pathway. And in that moment, it can really seem extremely daunting when you're like looking down this barrel and you're like, I know this is the road I meant to be on, but I can't see shit. I can only see as far as the headlights. I have no idea what's down this path. I have no idea exactly where it's leading, but I know this is the right road for me. This feels overwhelming and terrifying. All you have to do is travel as far as the headlights, okay? Small, tiny, teeny tiny action steps. Teeny tiny action steps. Don't overwhelm yourself with thinking that you have to have a fog light to see all the way through to the end. It's not gonna happen. You're gonna paralyze yourself into inaction. Just as far as the headlights can see. You just travel down little paths, tiny decisions. And if you make a decision and it's the wrong decision, choose again. That's okay. And once you've done that, once you've made this teeny tiny action step plan, that's when you commit to taking each next step. There's a quote from the second Frozen movie. I'm going to butcher it because I'm very bad at quoting things. It's something along the lines of only doing the next right thing. Like all you can do is the next right thing. That's all you have to do. You don't have to know every single step of the path. All you have to do, all you can do really in any situation is the next right thing, okay? And once you've made that commitment to this action plan, as small as these tiny little pieces might be, that's when you step in to your main character energy. And y'all, you will start to watch your entire life change. you will watch your entire life change. And if you don't believe me, the story I just told you is just one of many moments I've had in my life where I've gotten to that place of being completely fed up or terrified, make the decision, I can't do this anymore, decide to try something different, and my entire life changed. My entire life changed. You are only one tiny decision away from changing your entire life at any given moment, whether good or bad. That's oftentimes like kind of terrifying to me, that like we're just wandering this earth with total and utter free will, and at any moment we can make a small decision that could eradicate our entire lives, good or bad. But like I think of that more from like a criminal standpoint, that like at any given moment we could decide to do something super criminal and like end up in prison. Not that I'm going to do that, but that's the power we all have, right? At any given moment, our decisions have the power to completely change our life. So when I tell you that I am here to encourage you to become the main character in your own life, this is what I'm talking about. I want to encourage you to make whatever decision you need to make to start down the path of actual radical change in your life. And I want to cheer you on through the entire process. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for listening to my story and hanging out with me as I told you that story, because I've never told it anywhere. I've never actually shared any of that anywhere before. So I appreciate you guys listening and being supportive. And I hope it's inspired you and encouraged you to take a look at what decisions you might need to make to change your life. It might also encourage you to take a look at where you are right now and determine if you're fed up or not. And if you are fed up, what are you going to do about it? If you liked this video, which I hope that you did, I would hope that you would head down, do all the YouTube-y things, subscribe, leave a comment, like the video if you liked it, and I will see you guys again very, very soon. Bye.